Hello.
Hello, Michael. How are you?
I am doing good. Najee, how are you doing?
I'm well. Thanks for asking. I know
Ex-
it's pretty early in Malaysia. Thank you so much for coming on.
no problem. Well, there is our icon. Hi, Santa.
Hi,
Hi, hi
Santa.
Michael, hi Rajesh.
Good day. Good day. Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Santa is an icon among teachers here in Malaysia. She is one of those inspiring beacon of hope where young people could still make a change without the need to be the next Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. Because many of us, we may not have that route, but Santa is an icon in showing that doing the littlest things like teaching creates such a big impact. So, Santa, welcome.
Oh
All right.
Michael, that's like already nerve-wracking me already.
Nah, all good, all good. Thank you, thank you. Right, so let's have fun. Let's have
Mhm.
fun this morning. I see.
Hi Frida.
Hello, Santa.
Hello.
Hello, Michael. So I'm your facilitator. I'm just here to let you know that I see Michael so comfortable. So I'm just going to be here. I'm going to turn off my camera. So because you're at the spotlight today. But
Sure.
if you need something, feel free to put it in the chat, and I can help you with. So
Excellent. Will do. Excellent. Let's do that. Okay.
awesome.
Fantastic. So we'll be starting at 1 a.m. Yes? Excellent. Excellent. Sure. Nice.
Just waiting for a few more people and Najee will be moderating it.
Nice. The funny thing is, tomorrow, Saturday, Malaysian time at 2 p.m., I am speaking at our largest university in Malaysia on this very same topic,
Nice.
youth employment. Are our universities teaching the right things to make them relevant? So that would be interesting. Tomorrow, I'm speaking at UITM.
Nice, interesting.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Okay, very nice. Well, thank you again for inviting me. I see Tisauna is here. Hi, Tisauna.
It's Tishana. Hi,
Tishana.
Michael.
Tishana, my apologies. Tishana.
All
Excellent.
right.
Tishana, where are you dialing in from?
From Jamaica.
Very nice. And Najee, are you dialing in from the United States, Najee?
No, Jamaica as well.
Jamaica as well. Nice,
Yes,
nice.
yes.
Fantastic. I haven't had the opportunity yet, the fortune to visit your beautiful country, but it's one of those places that I would really want to visit sometime down in the future. So, yeah.
Same
You
for
should.
Malaysia. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Most welcome
At
to our
least you will
country.
have your tour guides lined up already.
Oh, thank you. You guys are very kind. I know that Nadia and I are already connected via LinkedIn. So that would be great for us to be in touch. Uh, Tishona, right? Did I get it right?
Yeah.
Tishona, right?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Yep.
So hopefully we can get connected on LinkedIn as well, and then keep in touch. What time is it
Yes.
over there now in Jamaica?
It's
It
11:58
PM?
a.m.
Oh yeah! Wow, very
morning in
nice,
the morning.
very nice, very nice. Wow, amazing. Okay, okay. So the day has just begun for all of you.
Yep. It's pretty early in the day.
Yep.
Nice, nice. All right.
Apologies if I
Awesome.
seem distracted. I'm just trying to get the remaining two speakers online. One was having some technical difficulties, so I'm just trying to work on that in the 2 minutes we have left before the start.
Hi, Youssef. Youssef is excited for the session. I'm excited too, Youssef. It's 1 a.m. here in Malaysia. And at my age, I'm speaking like I'm like in my 80s, right, Santa? But at my age, you got to be very excited, very passionate about what you do to be up right now and to be doing this session. So hello, Yosef. If you are very, very excited, please let us know at the chat box. Let me feel your energy. Selena, very excited as well. Hey, my dear friends, if you guys are really excited, you should be typing on the chat box. Rain us with questions, all right? Rain us with questions. Share with us your thoughts, okay? Looking forward, yeah? Yosef, I love the dedication. Hey, Yosef, if you're on LinkedIn, get connected on LinkedIn, all right? Same goes with Selena, same goes to everyone else who's part of this program right here. Would really love to get to know all of you. Very nice.
Right. I would love to also know
Can
where you're
everyone hear
joining
me?
from.
We can hear you
Yes,
loud and
Tishana,
clear,
loud
Tishana.
and
Loud
clear.
and clear.
Loud and clear.
Very nice. Perhaps we could start off. Well, we haven't officially started, but maybe for those of you who are on the chat box, let us know which country you're from. It'll be nice for us to get to know you a little bit. Yeah. Oh,
Martin, we
Frida.
have Frida from Mexico. Nice. Thank you for joining. Yusuf from Canada. Love the dedication, Yusuf. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sure I saw Selena earlier. Thank you, Selena. I know you're here, one of our silent warriors in the chat. Wonderful. Happy to have you all. Just less than 1 minute to go. Just giving some more persons a chance to join in.
Namiko, Tokyo. Fantastic. Hello, everybody. Hello. I haven't had the chance to go to Waterloo. Heard it's beautiful. I was trekking along Canada from Toronto all the way to what's that place called? We trekked along Banff National Park. I was there to promote climate change at that time, and the ice was indeed melting along the Banff National Park. Oh yes, we trekked from Toronto to Vancouver, so that was really nice. I was in Japan. I was in Tokyo. Tokyo is amazing. I was in Mexico as well. Mexico, I was involved in a archaeological project at the ancient Aztec. Mexico is Aztec. I nearly said Incas, but I didn't say Inca. That's for Peru. Anyways, Najee, I think if we could start very soon, or else it's just gonna be me talking.
No, definitely. I'm going to start right now. I see that the technological difficulties are still pervasive. Miss Wellington. Oh, here she is. Wonderful. So let's get started. Greetings, everyone. My name is Najee Nunes. I'm a UN Youth Advisor for the SDGs and the 2030 Agenda and a Unite 2030 Youth Delegate from the Caribbean island of Jamaica. Today, the pleasure is mine to welcome you all to this panel discussion surrounding SDGs 4 and 8. Today, we're going to be examining the intersection between education and decent employment. If the objective of an education is to enable one to become a productive citizen of society, but the course being studied isn't relevant, is it truly a quality education? Is it the responsibility of the education system to safeguard job security? If what you're hired to do, but what you're actually doing in your occupation is different, is that truly decent work? And is the education system in sync with the needs and the demands of the job market? Now, this panel discussion is going to have an in-depth examination of the, what I would say, volatile relationship between schooling and employment to find out if education truly leads to meaningful occupational enrollment. And in scrutinizing scholarship, what we're going to do, we're going to answer this fundamental question that COVID-19 has placed at the fore, which is, does all education give way to decent employment? And I see Michael and I see Santa and I see Tishana, we're all bobbing our heads because we really think that is a true question that demands a critical answer. Now, as the discussions unfold, as Michael would have said earlier, please feel free to engage the chat. I'd love to know what piques your interest. If you have any questions, drop them in there. And to start, for those of you who are just joining, let us know where you are joining from, where in the world. I saw Pakistan, I saw Japan, I see Jamaica, I see Malaysia, wink, wink. So we all know that we're all here. So as you would have noticed, I'm not alone on this side of the screen, and I have the pleasure of sharing stage with some truly amazing and awe-inspiring people. And I'm going to introduce them now. So I begin with Mr. Michael Teoh. So Michael Teoh is regarded as the millennials generation leadership expert and trainer for many Fortune 500 companies across 41 countries for his company Thriving Talents. Now, for over a decade, Michael has developed young leaders from companies that are global in scope, such as Coca-Cola and Microsoft. Now, having been trained by two of the world's top management consulting firms, Michael advises leaders both in the private and public sectors on engaging and developing young employee groups today. His efforts have earned him the recognition as Malaysia's Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2019 and was also recognized as a two-time national youth icon for Malaysia. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much, Najee.
No problem. I continue with Ms. Santha Nair, also from Malaysia. Now, Santha is an English teacher at a vernacular school in Perak, Malaysia. She was the former head of the English department. I see that hand, Michael, very subtle. And she is a master trainer for the Lower Perak district of the CEFR Aligned English Language Curriculum. Now, she graduated with a bachelor's degree in English language, rather, bachelor of training degree in TSCL from the primary school and is currently doing her MBA in Sustainable Development Management. She's an alumnus for the Young Leaders of the Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative and graduated from that initiative in the Women's Leadership Academy in 2016. Welcome so much to you and thank you so much for coming, Santha. We continue with Miss Tishana Mullings, my fellow country person here from Jamaica. Now, Tishana is a serial social entrepreneur and a master personal development trainer with over a decade of experience in training and development. Now, on the journey to achieve her social mission to help rural youth become globally competitive, she has achieved many accolades to include the Governor General's Achievement Award for the Parish of St. Thomas, the Northern Caribbean University Graduating Class Valedictorian, and a two-time nominee and recipient of the Prime Minister's National Youth Award for Excellence in Community and National Development. Now, as a founder and manager of Next Step Lifelong Educational Services, she works with over 500 students annually through her teaching and mentorship program. And in May of 2019, she received an award for being one of the 30 most influential people across the entire Caribbean. She's also a recipient of the prestigious Chevening Scholarship and recently completed her master's degree in Development Administration and Planning at the University College of London. Thank you so much for coming today, Ms. Mullins. It's just such a pleasure to share stage with you once again. I have two of the speakers, they're not yet here, but in anticipation of their arrival, I will introduce them nonetheless. We have Mr. Roy Taylor. Now, Roy is a senior education officer in our Ministry of Education, Youth and Information here in Jamaica. He's the holder of a master's degree in career and technical education and has over 3 decades worth of experience in teaching. And finally, we have Mr. Amorkar Brown, who is a passionate and dedicated classroom practitioner who's renowned all over the world for his unconventional pedagogical practices and his effective impact on students. And as I speak about him, here he is joining. Now, he is the youngest educator to be appointed by the Master Teacher Council in the Jamaica Teaching Council and is the youngest to have been won the national title of Teacher of the Year here in Jamaica. Now, he has received a plethora of national, regional, and international experience in working for his pedagogy, including the Innovative in Science Teaching Award, the Service to Education Award, the Excellence in Teaching Award on World Teachers Day, and the Teacher Hero Award. He has also been working with teachers within the Americas and the Caribbean region to strengthen STEM education in schools. Thank you all so much for coming. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I have a panel here of international acclaim. So you know that the discussions that we're about to have are truly going to be awe-inspiring and amazing. And as I said, we're going to be talking about education and employment. And I think in talking about that, it is important that we kind of help to characterize exactly what we mean by education and the purpose that education should have in the 21st century. Now, I know that Mr. Roy is not yet here, and he's the person I wanted to kind of throw this question to. But I know, Mr. Brown, that you are a master teacher, so I can definitely ask you this question and follow up with another question after it. That I want you for us now to kind of contextualize what a 21st century education is and what the objectives of this education should be.
Thank you so much. Good everyone, or good morning where you are. Certainly, the education system within the 21st century must be responsive to the changes in society, one that is in relevance also of STEM practices, of engineering, science, information, seeing that we have greater access now. So in all, I believe that our education system is responsive to societal changes, to be relevant and to remain current.
Absolutely. And Michael, I want to come over to you right now because I want to understand, especially from an HR perspective, as someone who works with thriving talents and talking about young employees, how critical is a formal education to employment success?
We're beginning to see the trend right now, Najee, and to all my esteemed panelists, that a lot of world leading companies are already downplaying the importance of formal education. Now, of course, bearing in mind though, if certain professions require us to have those technical professional qualifications, then those sectors, those professions would still need those qualifications. But I'm talking about those sectors that do not require proper or really technical professional qualification. I'm talking about the qualifications in business, marketing, management, human resources. You tend to notice where companies, I believe, like Google, has downplayed the need for such a non-technical qualification to be their main assessment should you get a job with them. I've also recently read organizations like even Ernst & Young, EY, is currently now downplaying the importance of those qualifications. So as much as I would like to say that the professional qualifications would carry weight if you're in a technical sector or a technical job profession, compared to a normal business or more art stream profession right now. Having said that, though, I believe these companies are moving to recognize something more important aside from just your piece of paper of qualification, and that is your attitude. I think as we're all fighting this global pandemic of COVID-19, no matter where we are, our prayers and hopes goes out to all of you. I'm a believer where companies are beginning to realize that we're in need of employees, or we're in need of people, of talent, with more resilient talent who is able to motivate, to manage emotions of not only their teams, but of themselves. Because one thing we have learned about the pandemic is that it has happened to us. We are fighting it, but that doesn't mean that this is going to be the last pandemic that we have seen. So I'm a believer where companies are now looking at how you're made, how are you built internally, rather than what institutions certify you to be. So that's my opinion, Najee. Back to you.
Definitely. And you touched on something I'm going to now throw to Ms. Mullings, that a major criticism of formal education is its failure to teach those life skills. You know, we're talking about financing. You know, we don't learn about insurance and debt and debit and credit and loans and taxes, entrepreneurship, emotional intelligence. These things, we don't learn about them in the classroom setting. Now, does an inability, in your opinion, to do these things have negative implications on the objective of an education system?
Yes, Najee and fellow panelists, I think this question is situated in the means and ends debate. Is education a means to something greater, or is education an end? And I believe strongly that education is a means. It's a means to job security. It's a means to decent work. It's a means to around. Therefore, I think education should be about learning. So are we asking the question as to whether or not learning is taking place? So in learning, is learning really taking place? So teachers are in position to stimulate, to promote, to engage. It's not just a delivery system. So the role of the teacher is facilitating that learning, where now we have a society where testing is the dominant culture. Testing should just be diagnostic, but not the dominant culture. So we should be engaging a child's creativity, engaging a child's curiosity. The areas that entrepreneurship, emotional intelligence, basic home and karmic tenants. These are the kind of things that will help our young people to be able to future-proof their careers and live a full life. So to summarize, I think it's not just that our education system needs to be reformed, it needs to be totally transformed on a global stage. Taking examples from countries like Finland, who looks at a personalized education system to make sure we're teaching these life skills and our children are coming out and able to engage and really get to the means, whether for them that's decent work, running a family well, or whatever their goal in life may be.
Thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. I believe that is very insightful. And it carries me to our resident SDG specialist, Santha. Hi, thank you so much for coming again. You know, we're all spoken about SDG 4, and we, you know, what the SDG 4, of course, speaks to a quality education. But Santha, what is it exactly does SDG 4 aim to achieve? And is that still possible by our 2030 vision date?
All right. Thank you so much, Najee, and thank you so much for the panelists being here. I hope you all can hear me. So basically, this SDG 4 has 3 different hemispheres with 7 specifications and total of 11 indicators. The first part of SDG 4 itself, the main goal, it focuses on range of early childhood education with enough care and readiness for every boys and girls to complete primary and secondary education, which leads up to relevant and effective learning outcomes. The second part is it is targeted to increase the number of young and adults for employment, decent jobs, and entrepreneurship. So this is our main topic here today. So this part here, it focuses on 3 things. Number one, it is even difficult to be employed due to the mismatch of skills. When you already have a job, do you learn skills enough at schools or universities, whether it fits enough with the job itself that you're already doing? And thirdly, if you want to venture out in creating a different impact within the community, or you want to be your boss yourself, do you have the skills? So that is the second part. And how are we going to generate a group of human capital for the next 10 to 20 years? So that will be a focus. And the third element for SDG 4 would be is like the biggest hemisphere with providing quality education. Firstly, the school itself. Whether do you have enough facilities or not? Do you have enough scholarships? Is it enough to teach at every single level? And teaching for the future isn't easy. So the pandemic comes itself, and do we have enough policies for all these matters? So back to you, Najee.
Thank you so much, Santha. What a key theme I'm seeing in this is relevance. And I'm going to end this segment of the discussion coming back to you, Mr. Brown, because as we have just contextualized, the world is constantly changing. That 2020 and 2021 are 2 completely different years. And if you want even greater disparity, look at 2019 and 2020. And as the world evolves, education too must assimilate to those changing times. Now, that to me carries this major question that is it the responsibility of the education system to kind of help to phase out those disciplines that no longer hold any relevance or demand? Or is the onus on the student to study something that will lead to employment? Why or why not?
Certain system has a great part to play in this process to phase out, but I believe that there is a need to create a partnership between the ministries of education and that of labor and social affiliated to ensure that the data, the type of jobs that are in demand, is brought to the education. We can make, production or offerings there to match what the society really needs. So education has a great part to play, but need for other ministries, to have a more interconnection or intertwining, working together to ensure that education is Currently, I believe that there is a big disconnect with education we're over here producing, but we're not producing, taking into consideration what the society really needs. So I believe it's more for them and the ministries to really work together to ensure that the offering is really relevant to what the society is asking for. Certainly, I believe that our students can be better guided, because if we do not offer things, certainly they won't have, these jobs that they're going into where there are basically, no relevance, or there is a cap to them. They will be better guided.
Absolutely. And that carries me, that's a great precursor to the next segment of the discussion that I want to have surrounding the evolution of the job market. I want to start the segment coming back to you, Michael. What are the factors you would say that help to determine job security?
Number one, I would say right now companies are looking for thinkers. They're looking for people who are resourceful. They're looking for people who are resilient to join their teams. If you want to talk about having job security for a graduate or a job applicant, is to ask themselves, if they were to join a specific company, what value can they offer to that company? I think I've heard too many complaints from employers that for some graduates, unfortunately, they label most of them, the millennials, people like us, we tend to be spoon-fed in schools. We tend to want to go to our employer saying that, hey, we're young, we're just out of college, teach me, teach me. But as the job market begins to heat up, employers are beginning to realize three things. Number one, there are more supply of talent now in the market. So for you to really have job security, the change needs to start with ourselves in college, in school, to be a thinking citizen instead of a spoon-fed citizen. So that's the first point. Second point is companies are rethinking their approaches of utilizing talents, because right now a lot of things, especially the mundane things that we have been doing all our lives in our jobs, can now be replaced by machines. And I think the COVID pandemic has accelerated the adoption of smart machines to replace human beings. So right now, companies are hungry for graduates who are able to think more, who are able to solve problems better intuitively compared to the machine. So if you are one who's thinking that I don't have to think, I'm just going for a 9-to-5 job, I don't think that's going to work anymore. And Najee and my esteemed panelists, last but not least, the third perspective that I'd like to share that I've observed from the job market. And again, this is what I've observed working with clients like you mentioned, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, General Electric, HSBC, JP Morgan across the world. They're beginning to look for graduates, if you want job security, people who have the proactive mindset to always develop themselves. Companies are now expecting you to be able to think a few steps ahead. Companies are expecting you to think about the different stakeholders that you may have a direct or indirect impact with through your job, and to anticipate, to think, how can you feed their needs? How could you surpass their expectation? And most importantly, us having that mental resilience, that edge in managing our emotions, especially with dealing with uncertainties that has hammered us, especially with the COVID situation right now. So those would be the perspectives that I would like to share with you and to all of you listening as part of the Youth SDG Summit right now.
Absolutely. And we see that this level of job security must be intertwined somehow with our education system.
For sure.
And so, Ms. Mills, I want to come over to you now. Do you think that the Global School of Learning has kept up with the world of work over the years?
Yeah, I think based on the nature of the conversation we have had from the beginning of this session, we realize that obviously there is not a keeping up. There's still a kind of mass education kind of format that's more for manufacturing kind of economy than the kind of economy that we're creating. An economy where it's a shared economy, an economy that's a knowledge economy. In many instances, in my own country, and in many other countries that have had the opportunity to engage with young people, where people are not actually realities of the workplace. Michael was just referencing just now where machines will take over some jobs, but there are some things that machines can never take over, like resilience, like critical thinking. And I'm still not seeing globally where our education system in all instances are prioritizing. You see, human resources that we're developing in our schools, they're like natural resources, very deep. So the teachers in our education system has to, and not just what is lying on the surface, not just the typical arithmetic, not just that we teach in a mechanic way, recognizing what we're before. Therefore, academia and industry must be closely connected. So schools must have close with workplaces where we're seeking to send our youngsters into after they're educated. And another thing that I've also noted, when you talk about the global school of learning, learning is not just the typical primary, elementary, high school, and tertiary education. Even the workplace has become a center of learning, and luckily, in many instances, that's where the gap is filled. But let us say that that relationship had begun earlier, where industry and academia had a closer interconnection. Then when you get to the workplace, the spend on staff development probably would have been a little bit less. And those who fall through the cracks and don't end up in the workplace to then catch up via some kind of workplace learning, then we're losing them. So I don't want to preempt the other part of the conversation, but the point is, in terms of the global school of learning and schools keeping up, there's still a lot more work for us to do and kind of close the gap in terms of academia and industry working together from the very early stages, not just on careers day, when you have engineers and consultants and different professionals coming into the school, way of operating, we're integrating.
Najee, if I may share just a brief moment to build on what Tishwana have shared. Do I have your permission, please? Can I share a little bit more?
Briefly, please.
Excellent. Thank you, Najee. Thank you. And Tishwana, that's amazing insights that you have shared. I would like to build on your point. And you mentioned about some things that machines cannot do. And these are machines having emotions or having grit and resilience. And we should have our education institution teach that. And I would like to advocate or suggest a certain formula right here. Teaching resilience, in my observation of what I've seen, how companies develop their leaders, and because I'm involved in such executive programs for my clients, I've seen if you want to teach someone resilience, grit, emotional intelligence, emotional management, we could always give them theories, but the golden nuggets, the wisdom often comes from real life experiences. Now, unfortunately, though, for a lot of our young people, if they're in school or they're in college or university, oftentimes they would need to get these experiences through experimentation. So what happened is that the institutions would need to be comfortable allowing our young people to create that safe learning space and environment to make mistakes, to step up to leadership positions, even if it's not real, even if it's just a simulation, to get them to experience more failures when they're younger, where the stakes are not high, they don't have families to take care, and for them to really develop that grit and resilience. And I would also like to propose an ecosystem support. You see, it is unfair, in my personal belief, for us to pin everything down to the educational institutions. So if there are teachers out there or university administrators, hey, let me hear you out, go to the comment section, say yay, okay? We shouldn't just pin it to them. I believe it has to be a cultural shift in a society. And how do we achieve that cultural shift? With permission? We have social media today. We have influencers with hundreds and thousands and millions of followers whom young people would be inspired, would follow them more than the average school teacher. So what happened is that I think there has to be a movement to include influencers of social media, to include industry captains, titans of businesses, to include our political leaders to say, we're going to shift the society's culture. It's okay now, us as society, to make mistakes in a safe environment like a learning institution, so that we're able to develop grit, we're able to develop resilience, we're able to experiment on new ideas. So that would be something that I advocate for, Najee.
Definitely, and I think those are very actionable points that we must have. And I want to kind of carry the discussion further to talk about the future proofing of jobs, because whether we realize it or not, learning has some form to play, and I would say, dare say, it's a critical component of occupational success. And so I want to come to you, Mr. Brown, in what role education should play in future proofing jobs.
Much, Mr. Well, I think education has a great part to play, but I think what we need to do, we have to look at, more educational planning. I think we're not getting that right in the Caribbean, educational planning and policy. So I think if we should check that, within that we understand what is our real function or what education should be doing for the society, then we will plan accordingly. Years ago, I was thinking that our education currently, it only prepares you for another level. So at the primary level, it's preparing you for secondary education preparing you for tertiary and so forth. But each level, if we're planning strategically and we're planning for society, at education system, we should be able to facilitate or to contribute to societal activity. So it should not be a case where, because you have completed school, you move on to secondary. Primary school education should be able to contribute to societal productivity. Secondary education should be able to do the same. So it should not be that each is just a prerequisite to. Now, if we're education and to look at educational planning seriously to support future-proofing jobs, we have to ensure that at each level we are giving back to the society, we are able to contribute. Another point too, we have to look at education as a factory, produce what is needed. So we can't say, for example, and it is not used within a country. To ensure that there's a connection there, that the school system, the education system, understand the need of the market and to do so in its training.
Absolutely, Mr. Brown. And I want to carry this evolution of the job market training with getting a learned understanding of what is it that SDG 8 that speaks to, of course, decent work and economic growth aims to achieve. Santa, can you help us out where that is concerned?
I apologize for the sound. If you hear a dog barking, that's my puppy just wants to join the conversation. So basically, SDG 8 promotes sustained, inclusive, and inclusive economic growth, and it have three main points. It speaks about economic growth and productivity. It also states that it progresses towards the efficiency in global resources and consumption and production to assist economic growth. And then the next one is comes in the social aspect of sustainability, where it hits our topic. There are 4 targets which hits this. And why is this target so important? Because it should have full and productive employment and decent work with different genders. It also helps to protect migrant workers and labor forces. These three focal points governed by development of oriented policies which should promote decent job creation, and it should have room to innovate in entrepreneurship with stable financial institutions. So why aren't people being put first compared to economic growth? So back to you, Nadia. That's a conversation that we should carry on for the next one.
Definitely, and it's a great way to kind of segue into the next segment of the discussion that I want to have around the education and employment synergy. We recognize that education, of course, is critical in some way or form. Let me not say education, but learning is critical to employment success. And we have to have some kind of connection, some dynamic, some synergy between the two if our young people are to be able to survive and thrive in that space. And so, Ms. Wongs, I want to come to you first where this segment is concerned. And would you think it's far-fetched for someone to say that the education sector is acting in isolation of the employment sector? And could kind of just flesh that out for us.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, institutions are smelling the coffee, and there's efforts towards changing, because you'll realize at the tertiary level, you realize that almost every year there's a new degree, and these degrees are being crafted to the tune of the demands coming from the world of work, so to speak. So there's some recognition that there must be some changes, there must be some response to what is happening, but we have a long way to go. One of the reports that I stay very close to is the Future of Jobs report. And one of the things that's been outlined there is that while traditional will hold sway still in the year 2026, more will accept alternative credentialing systems, such as self-directed learning options and other measures to evolve. So one of the things that we must focus on in our institutions is learning to learn. So our learners must leave school having learned how to learn, because they'll have to be doing a lot of this on their own, not just because the education was not sufficient, but because of the constant or transient things are. So you learn something today in a degree, and within 5 years, it is absolutely obsolete. So if you're not able to now go and relearn and explore, then you might be in a position where your qualification almost means nothing. So I want to wrap up by saying, schools need to be offering education that allows people to solve problems and to create solutions. As an employer myself, that's what I look for. Can you produce results for me? And I think a question that we need to be asking ourselves is, how do we sample from society what the needs are and keep feeding the education system? How do we prepare to pivot where we need to pivot? Just as how in the world of marketing, they titillate our sensitivities all the time for us to buy garbage, how we titillate the sensitivities of our educational professionals so that they can now stimulate our children and prepare them for what the world is demanding. It's the same thing that they do in marketing. Well, when you go on social media or wherever, you sometimes buy things that you didn't expect. Can we use that same principle and stimulate our educators and our learners to respond to the things that are emerging in society?
Absolutely, and I think this is a fitting time for Mr. Taylor to join in. I know you're having some difficulties. Very happy to have you, Mr. Taylor. Are you able to hear us? Because
I'm hearing you. Are you hearing me?
Yes, loud and clear. And so I want, as you've joined, I'm going to put you on the floor with this question. Of course, we have to have greater synergy happening between the employment and the education sectors. And so are the curricula and syllabi right now currently informed by the needs of the job market? Why and why not?
All right, let me say curricula and syllabi should be informed by the job market. That is a fact. I don't think that is practiced everywhere, but that's an area that we need to really push, because education should be driven by industry, not by anywhere else, because we are preparing persons for the job market. Because when I look, we need to be looking at the future demands of industry. So we have to look at research and development approach as we take in the development of curricular syllabi and important in forecasting and connecting future industry demands to education and training. So both entities, education and the training organizations and the industry, need to be doing research and development in all sectors. So
Absolutely.
the sectors cannot survive on their own. There has to be a synergy.
I definitely agree with you. And Michael, that comes over to you right now, because of course we've been talking about exactly the relevance that education holds in the workplace. And
Sure.
I want to ask you, we've been talking about exactly some of the failures of formal education. We teach persons how, as Mr. Bowen put it, to ready themselves for the next stage of the education system, as opposed to being actually prepared for the world of work and the world of life. And so what are some of the skills that our young people need right now that our education does not provide them with, but it's still central to employment achievement?
Well, thank you so much. I believe a lot of our education system today was inspired or was built based on the model of producing human beings as manufacturers, human beings working in industrial areas. But as has been agreed upon and shared by our esteemed panelists right here, the machines are taking over, artificial intelligence are coming in. So if you were to ask me what would be those skills that I would recommend people that is entering into the job market, that wants more job security, more job or career competitiveness to have, I would have to echo Tishwana, where it's the ability and agility to learn. So if you were to ask me, Michael, what's that first skill that job seekers need to learn today? The ability to learn, the ability to know how to capture information, the ability to know how to research, the ability to know how to be resourceful, to look for knowledge, to look for insights and experiences. One of my mentors shared this with me, and he said, Michael, in life, we are never stuck. We are just inexperienced. So if we are inexperienced, what do? We go and talk to someone who's more experienced. We go to the internet. We go to journals to look for insights that has been written, that has been published by reputable sources that would give us those experiences. So as much as I would like to say, for the Youth SDG Summit, for all the delegates tuning in right now, as much as I would like to say we need to learn digital transformation skills, we need to learn AI skills, we need to learn about, right now, the world is being taken over by cryptocurrency. We need to learn about crypto. I can say all these trendy topics, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Whatever topics I'm saying right here could be obsolete 3 years or 5 years from now. But one ability that everyone should have right now is the mastery to learn, the openness to adapt, the willingness to know that no matter how high you are in any organization, how successful you are in life, one thing is always clear: change is the only constant. Hence, learning never stops.
I love that, Michael. I think that's one of the key gems I want to take away from this session, that learning never stops. And my economics professor would say the only thing that's constant in life is change. And that change must be reflected in how education and our employment evolves throughout the years. And Santa, I want to kind of culminate the session as per usual with you, because for those of you who don't know, each SDG has a set of accompanying targets and indicators. Now, target 8B of SDG 8 seeks to, by 2030, develop and operationalize, let's say, a global strategy for youth employment and implement the Global Jobs Pact of the International Labour Organization. Now, Santa, what role, if any, do you see education in performing this feat?
All right. So firstly, let's look at the top 10 skills needed in the future workforce listed by the World Economic Forum. It has shown drastic shift from the previous ones. The new one highlights like what Michael was saying, innovation, active learning, complex problem solving, critical thinking, analysis with high quality, ideation. It is extended to creativity, controlling, designs, leadership, and the use of technology in monitoring, controlling, and programming. So my question comes into mind: how much does the education budget is for the well-being of the educators in the first place? How much does it cost to provide a stable mental health program for children and youth out there to have this human capital? How much is the government spending on upskilling, training, and including reskilling in every country? And how much is the government investing on new skills at schools and vocational trainings? So in my point of view, education plays a vital role in this target indicator in the aspect of thought skills, soft skills, and other related skills. Students from primary school up to secondary school should be taught future workforces, invest on high quality teachers training in which teachers should not only learn about the methodology of their subject, but they should learn life skills, innovation skills. Like personally, I met Michael in 2015 in one program which I had to pay to learn leadership skill. That was like 6 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And that's where I started it. And well, I'm sure people out there would be starting to ask me, is like, students are from low category or even disabled or having learning difficulty. Why aren't we investing on them as well? Because they should be given access to education, because they are part of the human workforce and they should not be left behind for the sake of profit building of any companies out there. So education is a vital investment here and should never be politicalized and must be put first in every national agenda. And it is important we educate as much young people in reskilling and upskilling, and to produce the human capital, first and foremost, allow young people to be there in decision making in the higher table. Why aren't young people there, in decision making education system around the world? We are lacking a lot of young people in, making decisions in the higher table. So yes, back to you, Najee.
Najee.
Thanks. Go ahead, Michael.
My apologies. I need to comment on what Santa have just mentioned. All right. So Santa, it's amazing. I've known you for years. So again, this is the Youth FDG, and I want to make it a little bit spicy. All right. So here we go. I'm not new to the global leadership circuit among youths. I mean, I came from there. I've given talks in London, in the UN, in New York, in Geneva, and also in Nairobi, Kenya. And we have always heard this notion of young people need a seat at the board. Young people need a seat in the university senate. I agree with all that. I advocate all that. We have also heard a lot about young people in rural areas or people who may not be able to afford quality education needs to be given education. I agree with all that too. At the same time, I have actually seen young people in two different groups. I've seen young people in what they call the urban, normally elite groups. I've seen young people in the rural, normally not so educated group. Geographical differences, family differences, economic income, earning capacity differences, all right? What I would suggest though, is that if we were to put a young person on the boards, on leadership position of organizations, my question is, if we want to serve the underprivileged, if we want to serve the groups that are from the rural poor, that are from the geographically challenged to access quality education, we need to pick young people from those groups, those marginalized groups. We need to train them up, and we need to put people like that in the leadership of organizations, of NGOs, of certain governments.
Definitely, Michael, and I think that's a great way, definitely, and it's a great way to head into our final segment that speaks to access to quality education for employment.
Sure.
And I'm going to kind of just pivot that question to Ms. Mullings in speaking about how can our governments ensure that there's equitable access to education, especially with employment in sight?
the question assumes that there must be equitable access to education if we're looking at closing that gap between education and unemployment. So I love that, because wealth inequality and educational inequality are very, very closely linked. It was Malcolm X that says that education is a passport to the future, but what if some passports are better than others? What if people have specialized passports because they have better teachers, access to better schools, and all of that relates to the type of future that they will now leave school to have? In my own country, the disparities are very recognizable to me, because this is the reality that I've grown up in. And that is what led me to do my dissertation on the topic that you're seeing here in the chat. I was looking at entrepreneurship in Jamaica, mapping the landscape and assessing its potential impact on access to quality education for the rural and urban poor. Now, I happen to have done a course through a program called Acumen, led by a lady called Jacqueline Novogratz. And they talk a lot about how you apply equality, social justice, and all of this to create a better society in the education arena and as well as broader. So what the dissertation was basically about is looking at a bottom of the pyramid approach. And usually this is not applied in the education landscape. Research, I saw lots of examples in India, and a lot of people were asking me if educational entrepreneurship is a real word. Yes, entrepreneurship is a real word. It's not one of them buzz terms that people come up with because there's solopreneur and mompreneur and every kind of preneur. Entrepreneurship, a real term, and this is how India actually transformed their education landscape totally. And I see we're not just Jamaica, but many other countries. In Jamaica, we have so many entrepreneurs, people that are teaching on their verandas, people that has businesses around getting scholarships to travel overseas, so many different iterations. What if there was a business that was looking at the prison system and looking at people who are coming out of prison and educating them so they can reintegrate in society? So when you think about education, we have to really broaden our vision from just thinking primary, high school, and tertiary. So as I talk about my dissertation, then I feel like I could talk all day as a keynote. So I just want to, stop myself there and give you the rest in my closing statements.
Absolutely. And Mr. Brown, I want to kind of pivot and come over to you, because of course, our teachers and our students and our parents and our education stakeholders definitely are critical to the success and the overall performances of the education system. But do they have a role to play in holding our governments accountable to ensuring that there's employment relevance reflected in the curricula for schools?
Very much for that question. Most certainly. However, it's a challenge seeing that our education system is centralized. I speak for most, Commonwealth countries. The education system is deeply centralized. So most of the key decisions are made, at the macro level. And most time, this somewhat reduces that level of inclusiveness, participatory type of decision making that we would want. And another line too, even when it seems to be inclusive, the voices or the opinions and views of parents, teachers, and students, but they are not implemented. And so I believe there's a greater need for the groups to be activated. You have national groups, Parent Teachers Association. You have the JTA, for example, in Jamaica. That they need to be more firm in terms of their stance when they move to advocate on behalf of teachers, on behalf of students, and so forth. But currently, say that they are getting that job done. It's their responsibility, but based on the the planning and the system we have, one that is central, I believe that their effort is matching up to what we are expecting.
Absolutely, and I'm sure we can concur with that. And Mr. Taylor, I want to come back over to you. What segments in society do you believe are most disadvantaged where COVID-19, where education is concerned because of COVID, and how can they be prioritized?
Let me get to that. Oh, with
Mr. Taylor, I'm not sure if you see me,
COVID-19.
but I'm not seeing you.
You're not hearing me? Okay,
No,
let
I'm hearing you.
me.
I'm not seeing you.
You're hearing me now?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. All right. Let me find my thoughts here. All right, so we're looking at what segments in our society are most disadvantaged as a result of COVID-19. And many children worldwide has been disadvantaged as a result of COVID. And the group that I'm speaking to is the poorer class, the ones who are disadvantaged right now because of the lack of connectivity for one, lack of resources. They can't afford the connectivity by phone or even by having access to internet. Some of them would not even have had electricity in their homes. And then again, the parents for this class could have been a challenge because some of them might not be educated. So as a result, the students, even though they might have some equipment or some device to work with, the parents cannot provide that form of support that is required to assist these students with their work online. So as a result of that, we have a lot of students who are absent from school. Absenteeism would have been one online. That would be the challenge. For our technical and vocational programs, that's another challenge. Being away from the labs, the resources not there at home for the students to have access and carry out these activities. So that's also another challenge. Language barrier can be another challenge in light of what's taking place. And if I look at the different sectors, if I look at the early childhood and I look at the secondary, and I even go to the tertiary, we have been affected in a major way because although universities would have been online for some time, the bandwidth for communication would have been an issue with Jamaica because our providers could not provide the requisite bandwidth to accommodate online learning. So we have to look at ways to work with this program, which we did. We had a massive effort made in short time to respond to the shocks to education system. It reminds us that changing is possible. We should seize the opportunity to find new ways to address the learning crisis and bring about a set of solutions previously considered difficult or impossible to implement. So we have to look at the solution.
And speaking of solutions, I want to kind of, before we close the session with Santa, come back over to you, Michael. And with that mindset about solutions, still pervasive here in the room, what is a major shift that you would like to see in the education system that would lead to more meaningful employment taking place, especially for our young people?
I think the biggest shift that I would like to see in our education system is by allowing our students or university graduates to do a few things. Number one, allow them to experiment more. And for experimentation to happen, I think institutions cannot be just an authoritative body that dictates what the student should learn. Institutions should become a facilitator, a middle person, to bring in different stakeholders, whether it be future employers, whether it be philanthropists, whether it be NGOs, to actually come in, or whether it even be impoverished communities that are brought in to the compounds of the institution to mingle and to propose a challenge that our students, our young talents could start working on in their schooling lives, heading up to college, heading up to university, so that we begin to develop, and this leads me to my second point, we begin to develop a thinking society. We begin to develop a society that feels that they have a vested interest on how we are making or building up our society, building a society that has shared responsibility toward the shared prosperity of our people. So I think higher learning institutions or even schools need to now start thinking as a facilitator rather than an authoritarian or a dictator in telling what students need to learn. They should be asking the question, why would you want to learn it? And how can we make the learning easier for you at best? So that would be what I want to advocate. And my last point before I conclude, leading on to the second main point here, is that I've traveled to 41 countries. I've worked with different organizations, and I've also learned from different people. And one of them was Sir Richard Branson. So I've had the opportunity to meet him, amazing philanthropist. And one thing I learned from Branson that he taught me in one of his sharing was it made an impact in my life. And he said, he's not the smartest person in the room, but what he's really good at is forming powerful friendships with people. He's good at spotting people, talents, and giving them an opportunity to shine. He tolerates, tolerates the wrong word. He embraces experimentation more than any other entrepreneur that I've known. Of course, arguably Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, all right? But Sir Richard Branson embraces experimentation, and that has allowed him to invest trust in others, to allow them to shine in his many companies that continues to produce innovation that we can be proud of and is changing the world today. So
Absolutely.
I would like to end with that word. Yeah.
And with that futuristic mindset right here, I want to kind of culminate the session with Santha. In talking about, of course, we know the Vision 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Santha, what do these things have in store for the education and employment dynamic?
Well, we only are 9 more years towards achieving it, and it has not been given us an ease. So I would like to say that develop a sustainable roadmap narrative and invest in 21st century and teaching and learning approaches which involves IQ, EQ, SQ, and AQ. You all should learn about that. Prepare and invest in mitigation plan to sustain education and employment during a crisis or a pandemic like what we have gone through. So this is actually an opportunity for us to recalibrate and restructure the education and employment dynamic all over again. And lastly, develop a productive and functional human-centered policy framework which allows continuous establishment in the promotion of lifelong learning aspect, which has skills matching labor workforces for employment and decent work, and creating that transition from school to work and between different jobs. So, thank you so much, Najee, for bringing up this conversation. I know this conversation will open up broader minds. So back to you, Najee.
Absolutely. The discussion is one that is critical, especially where COVID-19 is concerned. And we have so many persons who are now flocking to employment and are leaving our education system with wonders of what happens next. And if we're able to kind of create this affirmative discussion and this affirmative thought about the dynamic that should exist between education, then definitely we can help our young people be more successful in their employment endeavors. And so, we're out of time. It is now officially 1 o'clock. And so, the sessions have to come to an end now. So I'm going to give all my panelists a brief opportunity now in no more than 45 seconds just to share their final remarks. I think I'm going to begin with Mr. Teoh, and then we can go down the line.
All right, I just want to look at how we address learning loss, because to me that is very critical. So we have to look at dropout of particular marginalized groups, offer skills for employability programs, and support the teaching profession and teachers' readiness, which is very critical for us. Expand the definition of the rights to education to include internet connectivity. Remove barriers to internet connectivity, strengthen data and monitoring of learning, strengthen the articulation and flexibility across levels and the types of education and training. All right?
All right,
so
Mr. Taylor.
We need to have those addressed, and then we will survive the pandemic and use the pandemic as a lesson to move forward.
Definitely heard you loud and clear. Mr. Brown, heading over right to you. What are your final remarks on the discussion?
I'll just list them. education is, underfunded. So we need to revisit, financing education, so that we can have quality education. Work to see how best we can bridge that gap between the education system and the workforce, so that we are supplying, to suit that of a market, or, based on demand. And I think we probably need to move away from the centralized type of planning in education and to decentralize the planning. I think politics gets education messing it up. Politics, it's killing the education system. That's it from me. Thanks very much.
All right, Santa, or other resident master teacher, what are your final remarks?
Well, it's not too late to recalibrate and restructure the education system again. So start investing in it. And the pandemic has given us a lot of opportunities. So just take one step back and reskill and, upskill our human capital.
Couldn't agree more. Michael.
Thank you so much. And it's a great day to be joining you all here from Malaysia. My final remarks would be, I'm hearing a lot of finger pointing. I'm hearing a lot of people saying it should be the university that needs to do something, the government need to do something, they need to do something, the NGOs need to do something. I'm always reminded every time when we point at someone, 3 fingers are pointing us back. So what I would like to say is, as much as we want to say the university's at fault, the government's at fault, the policy makers are at fault, it starts with us. And I would like to conclude with this remark, this quote: one day or day one, you decide. Don't wait for the universities to change their syllabus. You can become an advocate. You can push to that route, but start becoming a role model in your own neighborhoods, in your own communities. Tell people, tell the younger ones, tell your brothers and sisters what mindset they should have going into this new normal post-pandemic. Tell them why it's important for them to learn, to be willing to learn, to be willing to experiment, to be willing to embrace failure as a pathway to eventual progress and success. That would be my parting words. One day or day one, you decide. Change begins with you. Thank you.
Definitely, I think in a room of change makers, that is very something that is quite apt for us to all take home and internalize. And lastly, but by no means least, Ms. Mullings.
Yeah, and feeding off that point about finger pointing, let's explore trying on the bottom of the pyramid ecosystem, where different partners and stakeholders are working together to make sure that we're delivering not just quality education, but equitable type of education. And this is where governments are working together. School teachers understand that they have agency in the classroom. It doesn't matter what command and control is saying in that classroom. In front of that student, you have agency. Funding agencies are funding private entrepreneurs who are executing various educational type businesses. So parents would be able to afford it, whether or not they have the funding, because they can be co-funded, they can get vouchers. I want to be as practical as possible with this closing remark. And as Roy said earlier, COVID-19 forced us to do a lot in a short period of time. And that confirms that there's so much that we can actually do to transform the education system. And let us award, especially our teachers who are serving the most disadvantaged students. In Finland, teachers are highly revered. Let's have that as a global model where teachers are revered because teachers are the cornerstone of every other career. So let me just wrap up to say, there's great responsibility at the school level and at all levels. Education happens in classrooms, not in legislative rooms by command and control. And that aligns with what Mr. Brown said earlier. So with that, congratulations, Mr. Nunes, and the rest of the conference committee who made this possible. This was a very fruitful discourse, and it was a pleasure joining all these exceptional people that are so smart and full of knowledge. It was a pleasure joining the ranks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mullings. And thank you all so much to my esteemed panelists for joining and sharing as we analyze this education and employment dynamic. I also want to thank Alyssa Chasman and the Unite 2030 team for providing us the platform to have these fruitful discussions and to share on a global echelon what we should be talking about and the impact that this could have on our young people. I also want to express my unfeigned gratitude to our audience, who has all 99 of them who are still here. Numbers have waned, but definitely we have been catching up, and they have been watching and they've been engaging in the chat. I saw Michael, I saw Miku, I saw Yusuf, I saw Selena, just calling out the names. I saw Khalil, I saw Deontay. Thank you all so much for joining us here, and I'm hoping that you would have taken something from this session to go and actionize in your own local spaces. And ladies and gentlemen, this was a discussion about SDGs 4 and 8, ascertaining if education truly gives way to decent employment. I'm wishing you all a fantastic rest of day and a phenomenal weekend. Do take care, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
Bye.
Thank you.
Welcome.